I'm John Travis in Mullumbimby, New South Wales, Australia, on December 19th at 6:30 in the evening, talking to Ewa Stelmasiak. I'm just learning to pronounce her name. I've known her for years, but my Polish is a little rusty. And she
You're
is in
doing great.
Warsaw, where it is 8:30 in the morning, same day. So, Ewa, we met some years ago at National Wellness. I learned about your work through Jim Strohecker. You sponsored me speaking to some of your people there. It's been 3 years now almost.
Mhm.
I admire your work, your diligence, what you had a story in, was it Newsweek, the Polish Newsweek or News, that
Yeah,
magazine?
yeah. Mhm.
You're a mover and a shaker, and I want to find out who you are and why. What led you to pick up this career? And we'll start with your birth and what your parents, how they influenced you, what they did, siblings, early school experiences, all that kind of stuff. So let's go back to the beginnings.
Whoa. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I also would like to say that how much I'm grateful for the documentation that you're doing right now for the wellness history. And I know it takes a lot of time, but I imagine that it's a lot of beautiful encounters. But
It
on
is.
behalf of all the wellness people all over the world, I would like to express gratitude to you because it's very
Well,
important.
thank you. Thank you. I hope somebody sees it someday. So, where were you born and why?
And why? Well, I was born on the 24th of December, which is Christmas Eve.
Oh,
Um, yeah, in Lublin, in a town that is in the southeast of Poland. It has 380,000 inhabitants approximately. Um, yeah, and so I grew up there in for the first 6 years of my life, 5, 6, living with my parents in a then communist country.
now was
Um,
this in the 50s? I won't nail down when your actual age is, but I'm guessing late 50s?
yeah, well, I was born actually I will turn 44 this year in a couple of days. So this is my age. So I was born on the 24th of December 1976, one year
Okay,
after
way
your
later than I thought.
opening of the wellness center in California.
All that you were doing at such a young age, I assumed you were more mature to accomplish so much. But anyway, yeah, this was after the, before the fall of the wall, and so
Yeah.
big influence.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a big influence, but my parents actually got a contract by the Polish government with Libyan government, and we moved out to Libya. So in 82, we traveled as a family, and I think my father traveled first, and then we traveled the entire family, and we spent um, almost 7 years, 6, 7 years living there. So in Libya, in Tripoli.
Oh, wow, that's a big shock, I'll bet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so you were 7 when that move occurred.
Yeah, I was 6. I was
6.
6. So,
Just-
yeah, so it was a very important experience in my life, really, because I changed countries and I opened up to a multicultural environment. I was then in a French school for the simple reason that my parents wanted to put me in a Polish one that was there, but they didn't want to admit it me because they thought I was too young and I was 6 and not 7, which was, against the procedures, which has, by the way, changed today. But then they were the way they were, and so I came up to be in a French school, and with people from all over the world, really all countries, all colors, all races, all religions, and it has been a formative experience for me.
Oh, so you were learning French and also what's the common language in
Well,
AAA?
Arabic, yeah. Well, I was learning. I was actually so I learned French I'm like a native speaker in French because I was
Oh,
really immersed in it for so many years, and I was also learning English then in French, and I was learning Arabic. And for many years, I also learned many languages. It was something like I was really drawn to learning languages. It helped me communicate. So I learned also German. I learned Russian, of course, which I didn't have to because I had these other competences. And for the school system, that was enough. But I remember that I was asking my parents for private lessons and I was taking Russian lessons. Even though, despite the climate here, then nobody wanted to learn Russian at that time. But I was so motivated and I really loved the language and I loved all the languages. And for me, that's I think it's like a little bit of learning of singing. So there's a melody to it, but
oh,
also I think the most important thing is really being able to communicate with people. And then when I travel somewhere, then I speak the language that I'm more part of the community and I can communicate, I can know people. So
yeah.
this has helped me uh, forge stronger bonds and relationships with people from different cultures and different languages.
Well, if the currency of wellness of connection is connection, you've got
Absolutely.
connection in spades.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And what language do you dream in, or does it vary?
Yeah, it actually it varies because it depends on there. It's very interesting because for me this has always been a discovery, those languages, because I behave slightly differently in different
Oh,
language when I'm speaking
sure.
different languages. So when I'm speaking French, I'm more like Parisian, like more outgoing and more maybe more fun a little bit, I guess, as well.
Uh-huh.
Just more kind of relaxed and wanting to have a nice lifestyle and eat something good and have fun and so on and so forth. Polish is more a kind of for nostalgic thoughts
Hmm.
and deeper thoughts, like also, like the Slavic culture that is, I guess, more emotional than other, cultures that I know of. And so I don't know, like I have a Russian person that I know that she would cry or she would sing out, or so I have these things in me as well. And I guess Polish is something for, deeper literature or poetry or thinking of deeper things about life, while English is the language where I feel most connected to my soul and my inner
Really?
guidance. Yeah, because it has
That's
a different
shocking.
flow. It helps really settle in the body and the you
Oh,
don't speak. I don't speak American English. I'm not talking about British English, but American English from the throat, but I'm speaking it more from the deeper parts of the belly. And
oh,
this is just, so grounding, and it's different from other languages, neither French nor Polish that I am most familiar with, and I'm using
really?
most have this. Yeah.
Interesting. It's just always a challenge for me to get my voice down in my body because it goes right up in my head so easily. But I had no idea that English was that facilitates it more than other languages. So I'm
Yeah,
learning a
well,
lot just from this.
this is my feeling, and I'm
Yeah.
curious how other people feel it. But there's something, so those cultural differences as well,
Mhm.
and the even American or Canadian cultures, Australian as well, have this kind of positivity and sometimes to an extent that goes too far and more, I would call it more Britishness than positivity, like not calling things the way they are really, or saying something else instead of saying what we really have on mind. but nevertheless, there is this feeling of inner kind of, the default is positive.
Hmm.
Whereas for example, in my culture, in the Polish culture, we have this as a standard default option to say how things are going unwell or and complaining, and like maybe in France as well, it's not that uncommon. But it's very, we share our feelings very openly as well. So we say when, I haven't had enough sleep, I have a bad day, I have, I have this and this going, and I'm waiting for the weekend to happen. So, and so
I
this is,
see.
yeah. So these are both true, the positivity and the real life like stories that are really happening. And I think the middle ground is a good option to follow,
Yeah.
like have a, between the two.
We used to call it flow and glow in the 70s with the hippie influences and the whole overemphasis on positivity and ignoring the shadow. So this is fascinating. I've never thought of languages or cultures as having those base kind of, well, I guess a few of them are kind of known for that. I think of the Germans being very, like, I have a German friend who's always teasing me that. So
Yeah,
you're in that.
German actually, what's different from German towards like Slavic language, or Polish, I can say, but talk about Polish, is that in German you have to know in advance what you will be saying. So you have to be clear about your thoughts. Whereas in Polish you can add words, adjectives along the
Oh,
way. So when you're already speaking, you can add things. So
interesting.
this is amazing actually. It gives more freedom of expression. It's more like being in the moment.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, I'm getting a whole language education here. Well, let's go back to AAA. You're there for you're in school, like French school with how many? Like, was it a large school or small with mainly other diplomats or?
Well, yeah, this was a school for diplomats basically, but also from all the countries, the African countries that, formerly French or with French influences,
Mhm.
but also people from other countries. So I don't remember really how many pupils there were at that time, but I'm still keeping some of the connections from that school. I have
Right.
a very good friend in Paris who is whom I met, and who's I've been friends with her since I was then there at 7 or 8 years old. So yeah, so yeah, and it was a small school, but with this international touch, I guess.
Uh-huh. And you were there for how many years? 7 or 8 years?
6 years,
Six
six.
years.
Yeah. And at the
That was,
same time, I had to work on the Polish school and the Polish material. So I had to pass exams each year.
oh,
And moreover, I also remember from that school um, that, yeah, well, I had some, I think it also gave me a certain boost for self-confidence, because I remember that at the age of 6, I've been asked to be on stage, which I was
oh,
often on stage later on in my life. And so I was leading actually the whole school party, kind of school celebration. And I was on stage and speaking. I was dressed up as in an Arabic outfit, and I was speaking French, English, and Arabic on that stage at that time at the age of 6.
wow.
So this kind of set me for loving the stage, I think, as well.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, this was a good time for me. Very interesting, quite challenging, because I was working hard in that school. Because when I came there, I didn't speak French. So in 3 months, I had to learn French, and I did. And then after 1 year, they told me that I was too good to stay in the regular system, and they transferred me from grade 1 to grade 3.
Mm.
So they said you don't need to go to grade two because you're too good. So I was actually already younger than all the other pupils while coming there, and then I got another year of
Wow.
and, so I was the youngest person everywhere all for my entire life
Mm.
probably. Yeah.
Fascinating. So, what any other school memories as you went through the grades? Did you do any acting? Were there plays or any
Yeah,
dramatics?
well, I was there on stage, but the acting that I did was more later on in my Polish system. But I also recall this story with I don't know the name in English of that. There was a person working there. His name was Ibrahim, and he was very helpful to me always. When my parents were medical doctors, and they often came late to pick me from school. So I was alone. I remember I was alone in that courtyard, and always this Ibrahim would always stay with me until my parents arrive. Even if there was no one in the school anymore, everyone had left. Yeah, so I recall, sitting in this courtyard and having my little bag of with tea, because we are heavy tea drinkers in Poland,
Mm.
like the British, and I had this tea with sugar and lemon. And I still remember that taste in this moment. And I had something else, I don't remember what to eat there. And I was just, waiting. And I remember that as an memory from that. I was very grateful to that man for being so helpful
Wow.
to me and so kind to wait and entertain me even. So,
And
yeah.
any siblings?
Yeah, I've got a sister. My sister is older than I. She's 9 years older, I guess.
So did she go to
So
Libya
maybe
also, or
10,
did she stay in
10,
Poland?
10 maybe. Say it again, please.
Did she go to Libya at the same time, or did she stay in
Yeah,
Poland?
yeah, she did. She did, and she was there in the Polish high school, and then she was admitted to the University of Tripoli for Arabic studies, and she started there. Then she spent a year in Cairo as well due to a scholarship, and then traveled back to Poland with all of us later on and finished her degree
Mhm.
at the Warsaw University.
Interesting. How were you close? 9 years difference would make quite a difference, but
Yeah, we have always been close because we've had the same experiences.
uh-huh.
But we have, other, kind of friendship groups, but we keep our connection in like a, in family, because family has been a strong value in my family. So however challenging that may be, we always, stay together and try to help each other. So,
Interesting. So does she live near you, or what kind of connection do you have with her now?
yeah, she's always dreamt of living in Australia. She spent some time
Oh,
there, but she never moved out. And she lives in Warsaw, but it's different, quite far away from me in a different part
uh-huh.
of town.
Uh-huh. Now, I was going to ask about your mother and your father. They're both medical doctors, and they
Yes.
were what took them to Tripoli, and what kind of medical work were they doing?
Yeah, well, so my roots are, I come from a highly medical, like many wellness people, a highly medical family, because the story started with my grandfather. My grandfather was the initiated the creation of the Medical University of Lublin in the 50s, right after
Mm.
the World War II. And he also was president of that university. He was author of an atlas of anatomy of the brain and the spinal cord. He
Mm.
also created a Collegium Anatomicum in Latin, and it was
Mhm.
an anatomy center. He was trained I don't know how in the 50s he managed to do it, but I guess science was opening the gateways even for communist countries. So he traveled to France, to Montpellier, and he learned there. And I visited this faculty in Montpellier some time ago, and I was feeling emotional, by moving through the same doors and, knowing that he had learned everything there, most things. And so he had, replicated and learned from that, and replicated the best in Lublin. And then, so my father is a professor of neurology and past president of the Polish Neurological Society. And he has significant contributions to curing multiple sclerosis, because he tested a drug that was called cladribine, that it's in use right now, but it was a 20 years long uh, work of his, and he believed in it so many years ago. So he did it with another professor of the Polish Academy of Sciences, Professor Grip. And so their work has been published in the Lancet. So this is my father. And my mother is an allergologist and internal medicine specialist. So she's she has created the first regional department of allergology in the Lublin region.
Is that a study of allergies? I don't know that term.
Yeah, allergies, allergies,
Allergy. Aller
allergies, yeah, and
and then,
internal medicine. So both. Yeah, she has two specialties. And so I remember when she was creating this department, it was after we came back from Libya. So I'll get back to Libya.
mhm.
But I remember that when she was creating it, she was really giving it a feminine touch. It was beautifully decorated. She has worked with an artist she knew, and the artist donated her artwork to decorate this department. So she was really giving it her heart, and
Mhm.
it's still there. However, she's not there anymore. So in fact, so the question was, how did it happen that we moved to Libya? So in fact, there was a program, a cooperation between the Polish and the Libyan government, and my parents were members of this Polish medical staff. So they were just earning money there and part of that contract, and they were working so in two different hospitals. As you know, my father was a neurology consultant. My mother was in internal medicine. She worked at the ICU, the intensive care unit, in the central hospital in Tripoli. So this has been an important caesura, as in Latin again, in my family's history, this travel to Libya. Um, so
Let's go back before that, actually, though, with your parents being so busy, what was your early childhood like? Did you have a nanny, or did your mom take off work, or your dad? What the
oh
earliest memories, and who else? Your
yeah.
sister would have been 9 years old. She'd probably been a big help for my sister was 9 when my other sister was born and became a little mother. But
Uh-huh.
what are your earliest memories of nurturance and connection?
Well, I remember that time in Poland prior to leaving as a positive time, but I don't have many memories. I remember, I have some memories of, um, for example, the sounds of birds outside of this,
Mhm.
grim gray kind of communist block of flats we were living in. So the birds at winter time, I don't know the word in English, those black gray birds. So this is a memory, or the grapes that were at the balcony of that apartment that we were, cutting off and having like in Tuscany almost. So we were having those grapes because they were there. I don't know how it must have been sunny in the summers. And I also remember that there were only two television programs. All of them were propaganda style, of course, at that
Oh,
time, number one and number two. And on number one, around 7 p.m., there was a program for children which lasted 10 to 20 minutes. So I remember sitting on a rocking chair waiting for this moment to be able to watch it. And this is a memory as well. Yeah, and our grandmother lived with us, so I also remember her. That's also, a story, post like war stories, when she had to. She was actually half Polish, half Russian. She traveled with the last transport from during the October Revolution, from Russia to Poland. She escaped because she had
oh,
possessions. So she was. They had a store, like something like the delicatessen or something, and so it wasn't safe for her to stay. So she traveled, and they arrived in the middle of nowhere, and that's a little bit how my family landed in that part of the world, and that piece of land. It's a little bit like by by accident, or by
uh-huh.
they just decided she just decided to stay there and not move anymore, and this is how it happened.
Now, was she the wife of the grandfather that was the anatomist, or a
No,
different?
that's one generation higher. It's a
Oh,
grandmother,
great grandmother.
and on my
Okay.
mother's side.
Uh-huh. And any memories of early um, family stuff? So you had your great grandmother and your sister and your parents all in um, a dismal communist apartment.
Yeah,
When you showed me around Warsaw, I remember the architecture is pretty gruesome.
yeah,
They're not noted for aesthetics.
yeah.
So, any other memories of that? And
Yeah,
was
well,
it
my,
fun?
my parents had a life of medical doctors, which
Uh-huh.
meant night shifts and these kinds of things, and a constant devotion and engagement in the life of the hospital and the patients.
Hmm.
So, I would hear for years, not only prior to leaving to Libya, and especially afterwards when I was more conscious because I was more grown up, so they would discuss cases at the dinner table. They would discuss all, the, all the problems and all the situations, which were often shocking and very tough, and from a wellness perspective, to handle all those pressures and stresses, and because it's human life, and they were wanting to do all they could, especially as young doctors, but not only, because they kept this spirit, always, of being of help, and like this Hippocratic vow, they are really walking the talk, so I have been listening to all of these concerns, and they have been always very uh, kind of engaged in this, hospital life. Yeah.
Hmm. Are they still alive
Yeah, they are. Both of them are, yeah.
nearby, or and do you much have much
Well, they
contact?
live in Lublin. I live in Warsaw.
Oh,
They
okay,
still live. It's their place, in the world, and
same place. Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting. So, when you came back from Tripoli to Lublin, also, or
yeah. To Lublin. Hmm.
I won't even try to pronounce it correctly, but
No, you're doing great, Lublin.
and so you would have been entering junior high school, we would call it, or
Hmm.
forms in Australia. What was it like re-entering with all of your languages and cultures to probably a very provincial kind of culture of kids that had nothing like your experience? What was that? And you were younger, or did you go into were you still the youngest in your?
Yeah, yeah, for my entire life, I
Yeah.
guess. But I'm an old soul, so that's the good thing.
Yes.
That's compensating.
Yes, for sure. I could sense that.
Yeah, well, this time was the hardest time in my life, I guess. Well,
I
except
would
for
think
some
so.
situations in adult life that I've had, but um, the this was a time when we came from sunny, colorful, not that easy life, because Libya wasn't an easy place to live with Muammar Gaddafi at that time and
Yeah.
his green book and all that um, kind of plus we had a really a series of events that you would call the VUCA world today, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, because we've had the American bombing then. So I was,
Yeah.
in a bombarded city. We've had a flood, we had a fire and we lost everything in that fire. So
Oh
my
no.
parents were supposed to go back to Poland, and then the fire, was the fire was there. So they decided that because they lost everything, they had to kind of rebuild before coming back to Poland. So there were many and there was a coup d'etat as well, so which concerned my parents because my father worked in that hospital where was
Mhm.
involved with the military and so on and so forth. So so they had even problems getting out of that hospital and coming back home because they were detained kind of for during that time, especially my father. So
Was the fire as a result of the American bombing?
no, 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 no. This was the result of someone who was living there because it was a country of prohibition. So this someone that we know of was actually producing alcohol, and it
Oh,
exploded. And
mm,
yeah, and the all the fire extinguishers were not working because children had played with them, so they were empty. And plus, the fire brigades, when they were coming, for example, they came in a there was a, I don't know how to explain that in English, but there was a kind of uh, a little bridge for so that prevents bigger trucks to go
oh,
through a street. So this fire brigade drove through that and lost all the equipment from the roof of so, so it's funny today when I think of it.
oh boy.
But then when there were people that were injured, we were so lucky because we left the apartment and couple of seconds later, the upper floor collapsed on our
Wow.
apartment, and we saw that from outside. So we had the chance of having an apartment that was at the end of the building, and we had a private staircase. I mean, not private, but just for that part of the building. So we
Uh-huh.
used it because the main one was in fire. So we used it, and then we saw that this roof had collapsed. So they were
Oh,
really traumatizing events, when you think of
yeah.
all of that. It was very stressful, but I don't remember that as traumatizing. I remember more because we experienced a lot of help from international communities. Like I was, for example, dressed by Filipinian nurses. I had clothes that were tiny women, so I was fitting exactly. And we received furniture from Greeks and people from Cyprus, and so we've been really given a lot of support and help. And I
Oh,
remember that I have such a keen memory of that, because we were feeling so connected. Everybody wanted to help us, and it was
yes.
a beautiful moment then. So it
Oh,
kind of made the healing maybe for me in a way.
yes.
Yeah. So Poland, coming back to your question, because you wanted to know about how it was coming
Yeah.
back to Poland. It was extremely hard, and in the sense that I've never seen my parents so stressed. And then at that time, um, the life was hard. It was just before the transformation because we came back in 88 and
Oh.
89 was the year when there were the changes.
Hmm.
So, but even the transformation, as much as it was good in itself for the country and for everyone, it was still a change.
Of
So
course.
a change is always stressful for
Yeah.
everyone. So
Yeah.
you would see the social values get upside down because in the past it was that you couldn't stand out. You were supposed
Hmm.
to be like everyone else, and you were not supposed to have more than others. You were supposed to be like everyone else and think what the government thinks you should think.
Hmm.
But uh, at, at that time, all of a sudden, some possibilities opened. So there were people who started making money in the new conditions. And they were people who had a sense of entrepreneurship and wittiness.
Hmm.
And this had uh, for how to say that. So we would like see, we would have people talk. Oh, he's making that money. Oh, he bought that car, and really this low energy kind of talk that is leading nowhere. That was the.
Materialism.
Hmm? What did you
We
say?
call it materialism.
Yeah, also. And plus some, because people were in fear. How am I going to cope in those new circumstances? Everything is changing. I have to adapt. I have to work, behave differently now. I have some opportunities, but I don't know how to use them because I'm
Mhm.
not, that kind. I don't know. I'm a scientist, for example, or or I've never learned the skills to be, entrepreneurial because was never needed in my life, for something
Mhm.
like this. And plus so a lot of low energy, I guess, and plus life was hard. So all paperwork and bureaucracy and all the administrative tasks and everything was taking a toll on everybody. So um, plus, of course, yes, it was also getting back to a very homogeneous white Catholic society
Mhm.
with in a gray, grim, and no sun and beauty. There was beauty, but it was still like today. Everything is renovated. With the European Union, we've received funds for maintaining historical buildings and so on and so forth. Then it was not yet a gem. It was there, but it wasn't yet renovated or it
Mhm.
wasn't that beautiful. So, yeah, so it was.
And you're a teenager during all this. That double
Yeah,
whammy. That's
yeah,
stressful enough without all the other stuff.
yeah, 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 absolutely.
Did you manage to have a boyfriend or anything, any social life with all this chaos going on around you?
Yeah, I did, but definitely I can't say that it has been a good time of my life. I was
Mhm.
I guess it has these. I don't know, if the events are to be blamed or it's never so that things are only because of external events, but this time was really challenging for me. I was meeting some boys and I was I was feeling an outsider, nevertheless. And
Mhm.
I was always, I had this. There's a Polish book by, you probably don't know it, but it's Maria Kunceviczova is the author, and the title is Cudzoziemka, which is a foreigner. And I have always been in this situation that when I was in French school, I was Polish. When I was in the Polish school, I was the girl from the French school and from Libya or somewhere. So I was always someone else. So this sense of belonging,
Mhm.
it has been jeopardized for me. And today I tend to think that I belong to the world. I'm a citizen of the world, and I choose, who I hang out with, whether it's in Poland or not in Poland. But at that time I didn't have these competencies and this self-awareness. So yeah, so it's true that it was always challenging.
So would it be called high school in Polish
Yeah, Liceum, high school. Yeah.
uh, so you probably did fine with your studies, I'm guessing, as brilliant as you seem to be. Um, Socially, it would have been challenging. And then anything else before you graduated and what the next step was?
Well, I guess, well, yeah, the graduation before the graduation, I actually finished high school. I was also blessed with a wonderful professor of Polish language who always believed in me and praised my writing,
Mm,
which helps me, I think, in the
yeah.
next years of my life, because I then learned that I could write
Hmm.
well. And then at the age of 17, I decided to move out of Lublin and I traveled to Warsaw. I also applied to the University of Warsaw to my first degree is in applied linguistics. So I
Hmm.
decided to study French and English and literature and plus, translation and teaching for so that I could become a language teacher. But I actually played with it for a couple of months and let go of it. And I never wanted to translate actually either because I always had my own things to say and I wanted to make the things that people wrote better. So I just couldn't do this job of translator. It was so boring for me. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but I remember that, also in terms of memories, because you're asking me for memories, for emotional memories. So I had this program was highly praised then in Poland, and so I applied and I remember my parents drove me to Warsaw and there was no internet then, so I just wrote a paper that was on the wall of this building that is no more, that doesn't exist anymore because it was really ugly actually, and I'm glad that they built something more beautiful instead. But I remember coming to Warsaw and saying, "Whoa, I'm in!" And I had this number one. I was admitted with the highest number of points. So this just gave me a new opening, a new hope, and I
Mm-hmm.
was really excited about that time of my life. And so I moved out to Warsaw at age 17, and I began this program. Yeah.
And you said that was the first degree, then you did a second degree or other?
Yeah, I did a second degree many years later. I did a degree in communications management at Syracuse University at the
Oh,
Newhouse School of Public Communications.
was that in residence or long distance?
No, I mean I was flying in 3 times a year
Oh,
for some residencies, which lasted 6 days, I guess.
uh-huh.
So I was flying either to Syracuse or New York City. So this was also, I've had two in Syracuse and one a year in New York City, which was a great festivity for me to be there and enjoy the city.
Yeah.
So my like actually the communications management came from my work uh, in a French multinational company after my degree. I actually started working during my academic program, the first one, and I got recruited to a French multinational, which is called Leroy Merlin. And I was first, I got involved with it while being a student as a assistant to HR assistant. And then I, climbed the ladder and became a head of communications for Poland. So I spent 13 years in that company. That's a big piece of my life.
Yeah.
And then because I was head of communications, I thought that I would, learn more. I mean, I was a practitioner, but I also wanted to learn more about communications and also add the scientific touch to it as well, because I started writing about those topics. And this was in 2005, 2005
Uh-huh. When you finished up your
or
13 years?
or eight even. I don't really remember. I'm sorry. This
Uh-huh.
2008, I guess, or five or something like this.
Now, it sounds like you were getting close to whatever the word for wellness is in Polish. What was your connection, and how did you get in with this weird bunch of wellness people?
Well, it all began when I was studying at Syracuse University at the Newhouse School, because I wrote my final project about wellness coaching, and
Mm,
I was really thinking of moving out from the corporate world because I felt, I guess, a little disillusioned with what was going on. I had given it my heart for all those years,
uh-huh.
and then I saw, some other sides of it, and I didn't really. I had some really great offers of working for other corporations, and I just turned them down, and decided to go for my own business and my own kind of path, um, and have more freedom around that.
Mhm.
So I remember that first off, the first thing that changed for me was that when I walked out in the street during daytime, I said, whoa, there are people in the street. Not everybody is in the office working. Really? What, are they not working? So this was my first impression. And plus the second thing is that I hated asking for vacation. I really,
Oh,
I really didn't like that feeling that I had to ask someone. I always was receiving what I was asking for. I was a highly praised employee then, but the sole process of having someone decide about whether I could or not could or couldn't go for vacation was not right for me. So I remember these two things. Um, yeah.
now,
So,
so you did you hear the word wellness first at Syracuse with your
no, actually not. Actually, the so I made an intro to um, to explain how I was going away from the communications realm and working for corporations. So I wasn't really interested in writing my final project in um, communications anymore. So I enrolled to the course with Bobby Burdett and Jim Strawhacker and Bobby,
uh-huh,
and so the wellness inventory coaching. And I Googled it, actually, nobody recommended it to me. I
uh-huh.
just Googled it and I enrolled, and I just loved it. So that's how I started learning from Bobby and with Bobby, who was just a marvelous,
Mhm.
wonderful, wonderful person and teacher. And I've learned a lot from her then. And I was so inspired that I decided that I would write my final project, my capstone for this program on wellness. So I wrote about wellness coaching in business, how to apply, wellness coaching in business. So
Now,
this,
had you
yeah.
known the word wellness when you Googled it and found Jim and Bobby's program, or was that just you stumbled on the word then?
I don't really remember, actually. I don't know. I
And what's the
wellness
Polish
was.
equivalent?
Hmm?
What's the Polish equivalent of wellness? How does it translate?
Yeah, well, when I watched your CBS program from 1979, that was probably, when the presenter was saying wellness, that's not a word that you hear often. Well, that's probably the case. It's been the case in Poland, definitely. It's a foreign word here. Today, it's well known. However, it's more connected with the spa industry
Right.
rather than
Yeah.
with the wellness that we're talking about. Now, in corporations and in the corporate world and business, we're talking about well-being. So
Hmm.
this is the term that's being used at the moment. And when we met in 2017 at the Well-being in Business conference, I already called the conference Well-being in Business, despite the fact that this was only the beginning of well-being. It wasn't yet there.
Hmm.
There is a Polish word for wellness and well-being, which is dobrostan. It has also, like wellness and well-being, some connotations that some people like it, some people don't like it. It's more about like a kind of quality of life. It's related also to animals, but also quality of, animal well-being. When you Google that in the Polish Google, dobrostan zwierząt. Yeah. Isn't it funny? But of course, it's just one of the meanings. But when you Google that, you would find that a lot. And there's the quality of life for patients. So you would find also the dobrostan for patients. So we haven't solved the problem of terminology, I guess. I have been writing, with all my writings, I have, because I co-authored 2 books on well-being in Poland. I'm always introducing a glossary. As a linguist, I really like to define terms before,
Mhm.
talking them over. So I'm always doing this. Nevertheless, there are so many influences that I think I'm giving up. And each company has their own definitions and their own approaches and their own models. So I'm using all those models and definitions as signposts rather than as definitive, definitions.
Mhm.
And I conducted a study over what wellness was among medical doctors. I had a sample of over 1,000 people.
Really?
Yeah, medical doctors, not only medical doctors, mainly students of last years of the faculty. It was a cooperation with my hometown medical university of Lublin.
Mm.
And we found out interesting things in perception. Like, for example, men would think more of wellness as welfare, like money that they're the providers,
Oh, yeah.
and physical activity, whereas women would have more of relaxation and peace of mind, this kind of stuff. So these were the associations, spontaneous associations with wellness.
So now you've done the program with Bobby and Jim, and you've written a thesis for your degree at Syracuse, and I'm getting bugged here by an unexpected phone ringing. Uh, so then you've transformed this into your project of bringing wellness to corporations by creating your own company, and then you had the program that I spoke at in was it 2017? That long ago?
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
still remember the wonderful time of traveling there. And so, how is that program? What's the terminology? And I'll link to your website on the. Although, is it in English, or do you have an English version of it?
No, not at the moment. I have an English version of a website that's, my name,
Uh,
ewastelmasiak.com, but the Wellness Institute is currently only available in Polish, because it's just a kind of more of a business offer of,
yeah.
descriptions of workshops and so on. But I will be reworking my website, so I hope in next year there'll be more information, and I want to sum up all I did in my life with writing and everything. So yeah, so actually I started, I got trained some more. I got training from Michael Arlowski and Annalise Evenson. I got training from, I got certified. So I got a certifications in wellness coaching, and also in, I got those certifications in, as a certified worksite wellness specialist, and certified worksite wellness program manager. I did it at the National Wellness Institute, and many more, actually, of educational opportunities that were not strictly wellness, but that were growing me as a human being, as a coaching professional, as a trainer. I also finished courses here in Poland at the Trop Academy. It's a renowned Polish entity for certifying coaches and trainers, with a long-lasting educational formats, like over a year for one training course. And so I started really, I founded the Wellness Institute in 2012.
Mm.
I already was thinking then how to name it, but because I was also mindful of those, well-being, wellness, and all that, but I came up with this definition of wellness that it was both well-being and well-doing. So
Mm.
I decided that you actually, I guess you liked it. I remember that you cited
Yeah,
it at the conference.
yeah. I should
Yeah.
remember that as a human doing, my job has been become more of a being than a doing, but doingness is certainly particularly in the workplace, an important factor to be named. So thank you for naming it.
Yeah, well, there's, but what I meant really was that that it wasn't all about feeling good. It's not
Hmm.
only about feeling good, it's also about doing good. So it's
Yeah.
also about, transmuting those feelings, but also transforming them more into something good for other people and the world. And
Hmm.
I guess this is so very close to me. And I also came up with this definition of wellness: becoming fully alive and expressed in and for the world, meaning that there is the component of aliveness or mindfulness of being in the present moment. And also, maybe we could include here the positive emotions that we may feel, but it's not all. And then expression, meaning the doingness, so doing things,
Hmm.
expressing, and in the world, because we are so interconnected. So there's this little spiritual component. We are interconnected as human beings, and for the world, because we are bringing our highest contributions and our gifts to help, maybe not help, but to just share the best we have in us, and keep making the world a better place every day. So yeah, so then I named it the Wellness Institute after a serious consideration how to name it.
And what would the Polish of that be?
It's
Or
the same. I have an
it's an English?
English name. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
the Wellness Institute.
Now, I was astounded when Jim picked up the wellness inventory, what, 20 some years ago. I'd never dreamed of it having any application in the business world. And he had to de-Californize it a little bit, but things have changed, and you're one of the people changing them. So, but how much of a struggle has it been with getting the corporate bean counters to come around and recognize that there's an ROI of actual
Yeah.
um, wellness? How's that going?
Yeah, well, when I began my wellness kind of endeavors here in Poland, I was more in the medical field. So
Mm.
I was working with patients, helping them in a chronic disease and stress. So these two things, as a coach, as a wellness coach. So I have a track record of that, and I was also presenting at conferences. So I had the privilege of being invited to medical conferences, and both in Poland and in other countries. So, like for example, world medical conferences, the world class, events, which were I was this professor Amos Korczyn from Tel Aviv invited me when he heard me speak in Poland. And so I spoke for medical doctors of all over the world about wellness. And I
Mm.
remember those reactions. I can't believe that we're talking about wellness here. And some of them were really surprised. And then over the years, when I presented, a couple of years later, I got other feedbacks like, yeah, we're starting to do this. We're doing this in Scandinavia. We're starting to include wellness in medical education. I also wrote a book chapter on medical education, that how we it was prescriptive. I don't like telling people what they should do, but this was required there. So I was advocating for including wellness into medical education, which is of course not the case here. So this was a publication by the Polish Federation of Medical Societies, and it was a kind of a lobbying publication for the government to, give them the best of ideas on how to improve the systems. So I was very much involved in, I had a sense of mission and purpose around really medicine, and not only changing the face of medicine in the sense that towards a more holistic view of the patient, and not this linear, fragmentarized, post-Cartesian kind of
Mhm.
paradigm, but also helping medical doctors take care of themselves. So invitations to other conferences followed, like I was invited to neurology, headache, psychiatrists, and I was really speaking a lot over the years, and advocating for self-care, and you cannot even imagine how needed that was. I had sometimes
I can
reactions from
imagine.
medical doctors, yeah, and they would come to me with tears in the eyes, and they were
Yeah.
saying, thank you so much for saying this loud, or I'm
Mhm.
so thankful that I had this moment of self-reflection, that I could, they would not admit this normally as medical
Yeah.
doctors. It's very hard.
Not safe.
But
Not safe.
yeah, but when an opportunity presented itself, because they could sign up for a workshop during a conference or a lecture, then they would just stay and listen, because otherwise then that it's hard to make the time, because they're working many jobs and shifts and so on and so forth. So this was one thing that was due to personal experience and a personal mission of having known medicine from the inside out, from my home,
Yeah.
and having the understanding. And also, of course, I was asked by my family to go for medical studies, and I didn't. My sister actually got admitted, but she refused to go anyway. We were, neither of us wanted that. And I think it's sad, but something was just not quite right for me in it, and I
Yeah.
wasn't drawn to it. I was. So then I spent those years kind of understanding myself, when I got out from the corporate world, and understanding this, where did these feelings come from, and what was I was feeling about all of that intuitively. And so I made it into doing, and I was actually promoting this holistic view of health, and that health was not only physical. And then really when you arrived was 2017, was a in Poland, was a turning point for me, because I decided to move to business,
Hmm.
and so come back, like, so I let go of the corporate world, and then I said, okay, but the corporate world is so, a big part of me, really. I know it so well. I've worked there, and so I thought, okay, well, let me bring that back to the corporate.
Hmm.
And these were really the beginnings of this field in Poland. Nobody, it was like an abstract thing for most people. um, so so it wasn't there wasn't a ground for that was made, like, by the insurance system in the US. It's not the case here. It's not needed in that sense. So it's more of a voluntary work, in more like a employer branding initiative or something like this. So yeah, so since 2017, very slowly I've been building this business with corporations. And then there was the pandemic. And the
Yeah.
pandemic, so I was advocating, really, take care of yourself, and take before you take care of others, basically, and take care of others, but also include yourself in the picture, because we are not used to it as neither, I mean, women nor men, nor many men either, and especially leaders. When I'm teaching them, when I'm teaching leaders self-care skills, and I'm calling it a competency. I remember from one training that one man said, no, 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 it's not a competency. But in the end of the training, he was summing up the whole thing by saying, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, everyone. It's a competency. Self care is a competency. So,
Right.
what has changed now with the pandemic is that the well being, which was nice to have prior to the pandemic, became a must have now because
Hmm.
people need skills to cope with what's going on. So, this has changed everything. So, for example, in March, at the beginning of March, I moved all of my webinars, trainings, and all offerings and speaking to these Zoom basically, or other tools that if other companies prefer other tools because they're not feeling well with Zoom. So I had to make that change, but well-being became not only important, but it became urgent.
Hmm.
So many companies understand that, and they have a will to take care of mental health now, but also physical activity, because in the home office when you're sitting all the time, it's no good for neither your mental
Yeah.
health nor your physical health. So there is a new opening in that regard.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you've done a great job of shifting the culture there and other parts of the world, and you're being accepted and uh, brilliant. I I haven't interviewed many of you that I consider the second generation of wellness people. And us old folks, old fogies are glad to see that others are filling the ranks. And um, it's so enheartening to see the acceptance of things that I didn't even think were possible back when in the 70s when we were in the cracks basically. So
Mhm.
it's delightful. Now, have you had any time for a social life amidst all of these wonderful innovations and creations?
Yeah, well, I guess I have. I have two sons, first off, in terms of social family life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of my sons is now 21 years old, and the other
Wow.
one is 13 years old. So their names are Marcel and Julian. And Marcel has just moved out from the house. So I'm a half empty, I'm experiencing in partly an empty nest syndrome.
Uh,
And so, and I guess everything in my life is coming early, and this too. So yeah, so I have been actually spending time raising them for the last 20 years.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, and this has like when we talked yesterday, I told you that I started writing this book, and so it's really time for me now because my children are grown-ups and I can devote more time to
Mhm,
my creative, professional, and happiness kind of projects because this is
mhm,
something I've always wanted to do. So yeah, so having a full life requires compromise, of course, over
mhm,
some parts of this life. You cannot, the space is just one. So if you don't take something, you can't add more unless your energy is depleted later on. So I've been learning to manage my energy over those years to accomplish all things in all areas of life. So um, and Marcel is such an open spirit, a thinker, and a person who's completely out of the box. And I have learned a lot from him over the years on even having conversations.
is he the older one?
He's the older one, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So he's off doing what? University or?
No, he's not at university. He moved out and he's pursuing his projects. He's very interested in helping in enabling social dialogue. You know, he wants to facilitate discussion forums. That's a project that he's working on. So I think it's a very important thing for democracy and
Yeah.
and happiness of all the people all over the world to be able to hear each other, understand each other, and treat each other with respect and exchange ideas. And the younger one, Julian, is and Marcel is actually also out of the box because he's he's also he has also a multicultural background because his father is French, and so we've got family in south of France, and I've been traveling there for most of my years, you know, at least once a year. And Julian, on the other hand, who's 13 years old, is a heavy worker. I mean, in a sense that he's learning a lot. He loves learning. He's so well organized. You know, I'm really in awe with how he gets things organized, and so really self-mastering his
Mm,
time. And I just these new generations, they're just, I don't know, like I'm in awe when I'm looking at that, really. And he's and but what's most important for me is that he brings a beautiful warm energy
mm,
to the family. He's a very beautiful spirit. Yeah.
wonderful. I had no idea that there's this whole other side of you, that you had time for all of this. Um,
Yeah.
Delightful, yeah. And I can see both of them, the influences that you've had to inspire them in their direction. So that's very rewarding, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
There's one
well,
thing that I have not had time for, not enough time for, was singing. And
ah,
if you had asked me the question, what was making me alive at the moment, except for writing my book, it's also that I came back to singing. So I had two in my life. I had two performances. One of them was at a conference, actually, and I'm singing French classical songs, and I just love singing. I came back to singing when my older son moved out. I created this space, and I, you know, introduced the singing back. So I'm so happy
ah,
about, you know, pursuing this path again. So I'll let you know whenever I have some recordings or
I'm looking
performances. So
forward to it. Yeah. Did you ever perform at the Sandy Queen's talent show at the National Wellness Conference?
no, no, I didn't. No, no, no.
I didn't either, but no, that's a wonderful balance for the amount of head work that I'm sure is involved in organizing and doing what you do. So, well, I'm wrapping up here. It's getting dark and I haven't had my dinner yet. So, uh, what final words do you have of wisdom for future generations or your own generation, or any other things that we missed? I'm glad you asked that you brought in about your family that I had no idea of. I feel like I've really gotten to know you in this hour or so. But what would you wrap up with?
Yeah, well, I think what my thoughts go to the currency of wellness is connection. And I think that the most important thing is really this maintaining connection despite this physical distancing right now. And I'm also, you know, even the feeling connected to the wellness movement, and you know, our uh, conversations and the help that you have provided me with, all the information that you also shared with me. I'm so grateful for that. all about, wellness and all the documents and that show the road. And I'm feeling so much part of this wellness movement. I feel so connected, and I'm just happy, that I can connect,
Mm,
and that I can bring it forward, really. And I promise that I'll make the best use of all that legacy, and I will do my best to promote this, and also maybe science proof as much as I can, maybe at some later age when I have even more time. But I
mm.
think it's important, for some to have it evidence based. So I'm on my way, and I'm also dedicated to uh, bringing the best of my gifts and contributions to moving the wellness movement forward.
Brilliant. And I can see you've done a tremendous job already, and I look forward to where it's going to take you, and delighted that we staying in contact so far away. So, well, thank you again for your time and contributions. And I'm going to end the recording so we can um, send it to the cloud. So, good night.
Thank you. Thank you.